Welcome back to Driving Force Radio, where we seek to discover what drives today's leaders. My co-host today is Cristin Tarr, the Managing Director at Business Service Corps, an organization that really works with for-profit businesses and nonprofit businesses and really tries to get them to engage in these larger social impact programs all over the world. And today's show, we're taking a little bit of a different look at this in our Community Matters segment, and we're looking at global citizenship and how people are engaged. And in the first segment, we had two fantastic youth who are out there changing the world. But in this segment, we're going to look at how global citizenship is sort of taken into someone's business.
Yes, exactly. Social entrepreneurship is another way to say it. Giving back to the communities where you live and work could be global, could be local. But giving back is part of what I believe is the way that businesses are trending towards. And becoming a global citizen, looking beyond yourself, just like you heard earlier today, is really kind of an exciting new business model that a lot of businesses are doing. And I'm really happy to have Dr. Richard Stickel here today. Thank you very much for coming.
Pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
Could you tell us a little bit? I didn't even enter the company that you work for, that you founded, the Milestone Project, but can you tell us a little bit about your background first?
Okay, ready to be shocked?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, good. First of all, I'm a person who believes that life is two things, mutually satisfying relationships and memorable meals. That's it.
I like that.
And also, it's a life that has had sort of high-risk choices. So an example or two, in 1969 I flew into Biafra during the Nigerian Biafra Civil War. I flew in with $20,000 tied to my waist, that my wife tied to my waist on a humanitarian mission.
Wow. And
I was looking for an agronomist to get seeds that would grow in an enclave where in that year and that century, that was the war where starvation was used as a weapon of war. Then the second choice was the Children's Museum, where I was director from '76 to '84 here in Denver. And that one was a job I took with a guaranteed 5 weeks of employment. But I said, this is too good to pass. I love children's museums, love interactive learning. So 8 years later, earning 95% of our operating budget through something that later on became known as social enterprise and social marketing, which we'll talk about. We had a new building. It's now the 6th most popular children's museum in the country, according to Forbes magazine.
Wow. Has
300,000 families plus each year going through. And the third choice, I guess it illustrates high risk, is the choice to create the Milestones Project, a nonprofit but enterprising nonprofit organization that we started about 13 years ago, my wife and I, and we used the equity of our house to get it started. We refinanced it twice.
So what is the Milestone Project? I know you have a book here and a couple of pictures.
The Milestones Project promotes mutual respect and understanding and empathy for others and inclusion of others by showing how we are alike, using photographs to illustrate the 19 milestones. That's how we started, that we share regardless of our skin color, our ethnicity, income. We will lose a tooth by 8 years old. We'll get our first tooth by 1. We will walk, we will crawl, we will go to school, get our shots to the doctor. And we photograph and put into books, now numbering 13 books, for thoughtful parents and educators, the social message that we're more alike than different, and that the superficial differeces are superficial differences unless we start making judgments about it. We started with diversity, we then morphed to 3 other areas. One is faith, because we saw an uptick in violence against people with other religions. We then looked at immigration, because we saw that as another example of creating an other and people who were different because of where they came from and how they were discriminated against because of that. And the fourth area is the area of special needs, where people are often discriminated against because of just an accident of birth.
Yep.
Well, Richard, I have to ask you, you know, you said you've lived this life of risk, and so you've been everything from humanitarian to museum director to now this. But what possessed you to move into photography and to look at this? I mean, photography is a tough business, right, but we're looking at the most beautiful faces all around us. Yeah. What was the motivation to start taking pictures and move into this new passion?
Well, when we looked at this uptick in violence, and we saw daily headlines about one group literally being discriminatory and violent against another. The motivating moment was we saw an article about a train going to a Hindu shrine, and it was set upon by extremists of another faith, and it was set on fire, and people died, men, women, children, just pilgrims. And then a week later there was a retaliation, and it just flipped, the faiths flipped. So the Hindus set afire a train of another group of pilgrims. And we said, what are we going to do about that? Right. We're really poor bystanders. We can't see an injustice and just ignore it and say it's somebody else's issue. So we said, well, who's looking at the issues of similarity? Who's looking for commonalities that we share? Sure, there's respect for differences that are being covered in schools. We think this is the cousin to the respect for differences. We wanted to look at how best to show with few words, but really photographs, that we really are more alike than different. And it turns out that photography was probably the best way to do it. And oddly enough, we knew nothing about photography, but we found a mentor. And the mentor is a local photographer, Brian Payne. Brilliant, lovely person. For 4 years, he looked at every picture we took and fired us after 4 years and said he can't teach anymore. We can teach him. And we've been told that. We're told that we're storytellers using photography and accessible language.
Absolutely.
And what I find interesting, our earlier guest was CISV. We had 2 young youth come in and talk about the exact same things that you're just describing through your pictures, about some of the changes need to take place through our children. Right. And do you believe that our children are your voice to reducing the unrest in our world? Absolutely.
I mean, we ask as adults, what kind of world do we want to leave for our children? I mean, I heard that you have a grandchild, at least Caleb is one, and we ask that question all the time. We said, why are we here? And one of the answers we give ourselves and that motivates us is that there are probably 3 questions we have to ask as human beings. And I think we try to encourage kids to ask these questions. What's your true north? What are the values that are unshakable that you have? That no compromise. The second question is, what's the folklore you want people to be telling about you 200 years from now? Not tomorrow, 200 years from now. And the third question is, what's your legacy? What difference did it make that you lived on Earth? And we say those questions never change. How you answer them changes depending on the individual. Yeah. And we want individuals to say, I had a choice in using my life for the good of others. I learned things so I can serve others, or something perhaps very different and maybe more selfish. We say it's your choice. We are confident, given a choice, children will make a choice on behalf of others.
That is so true.
I think that's 100% true.
Yeah, obviously from our guests earlier too, we saw that same. Now, Jan, did you have another question about the milestone?
Well, I just, you know, I want to understand the Milestone Project in terms of social enterprise. So you take the pictures and create these fantastic books. I mean, they're beautiful, and they're faces of all different shapes and sizes and colors, and I love that.
I love this one.
Is the social enterprise the selling of the book? Is that how it's funded? Or talk about the structure of Milestone and sort of what that looks like.
Okay, well, I'm going to take you back sort of a generation, because I think the sort of the teething period was at the Children's Museum. And what we did there, as we did with the Milestones Project, is ask what are the assumptions that people make about museums? What are the assumptions that people make about peace or social justice organizations? And then once we understand what they are, then we say, wait a second, if they don't work to create a viable organization, we have to change them. So at the Children's Museum, we did some things that just turned the whole set of assumptions of what museums do on its ear. For instance, we looked at a newsletter. Newsletters are given for museums, for nonprofits. And we said, it's costing us money each month. We said, why do we have it? If it doesn't work, and if it's a negative drain on our limited resources. So we said, well, what could we do instead of a newsletter? So we created a newspaper called Boeing, and we created a network of Boeing distributors in 10 other cities. And for a while, we had the third most distributed newspaper in the country, after the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times. And it was, in Denver, it was distributed to every school, every child, every family in the greater Denver area. So that was one example. We said memberships are usually donations. We said, no, memberships are commodities. So what we did is we packaged it as a product, and we sold it to child care centers, which they offered as a attraction for people signing up at their at schools. But we offered it to one, so they had an exclusive when they paid an exclusive price for that benefit. So that was another income stream. And the third one is we looked at what we knew best as educators, because we really, at the end of the day, were teachers and educators. And one of the conclusions was that we knew what kids wanted to learn, and we knew what corporations wanted to bring to their customers to make them more loyal customers, to attract new customers with communication messages that others couldn't offer. So we created strategic alliances with corporations. So kids want to get allowance. So we created Small Change Your Book. So we said, who needs and who wants this? And we said Citicorp. So we went to Citicorp, not to their contribution side, but to their business side, and said, we'll offer you a 3-part strategy. A book that you will have alone to offer to your customers, an exhibit that will travel to your major markets, and a curriculum for schools that would otherwise not have your brand on it if it wasn't coming through as a partnership. Well, we eventually sold to them about 400,000, 500,000 books. It produced net income for the museum about, I think, just over $1 million.
Wow.
And it was one of several strategic alliance strategies that we created for corporations. So that's where we cut our teeth.
Corporate partnerships where it's a win-win.
And that term always drove us. What are they going? How do we meet their vested self-interest? So now transpose that to the Milestones Project, and the Milestones Project said, educators and parents want to recognize that we have the same yearnings worldwide. We all want to be loved. We all want to love. We want to learn something new. We want to have an opinion that matters. We figured there are 9. And we said, how do we help parents and educators teach mutual respect, teach understanding of others, teach empathy, and have that as part of their life, not just a subject in school. And we said, well, we'll do it through photography. We'll do it through the resources that you see here, 13 books. And we sold them, for instance, similar to the museum. So the first book we did, the Milestones Project book on the 19 milestones, not all of them, I think 11. We said, who needs and who wants this? And we sold 4,800 copies of that book to the Littleton Public Schools.
Wow.
And we also packaged it with 15 photographs per school, which were rotated for years. So that's the kind of thinking we have behind everything we do. The In Common, if we get to that, we can talk to you about that, because that just has a twist to it that happened Friday.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that. That's how Dr. Stickel and I were introduced, because CISV was bringing in children from all over the world, the guests that we had on earlier, and we hosted a village here, and he and his wife volunteered to take pictures of each one of the children and give them these pictures. We also asked these children at this village, again they were from 12 different countries, to take pictures of what they believed was peace.
Mm-hmm.
And so we are taking pictures of these peace, and the children would take it, and it was no faces included in this one. It was just things that they saw in the community or where they were living, and they created these wonderful pictures of peace to put on his new project, because Dr. Stickel is always coming up with new ideas, and his wife. And so the new project is called In Common Images.
Right.
You can tell us about that.
Okay, it's a program of the Milestones Project, and I have to confess, because the world should hear this. People ask us all the time, how do you take photographs that are so intimate of people? Because it's now 70,000 photographs in 33 countries. And my answer is very simple, and I will answer your question. I said there are three reasons that we can get these pictures taken. One is I travel with a stunningly beautiful woman.
That's
Shelley.
true.
That's right. My wife. It'll be 50 years in June.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you. The second, we carry cameras that look impressive and expensive, so people think we know something about photography. And the third is we say we're mature, so we look benign. So people say they can't possibly, hurt us. So that's kind of our entree. In Common Images as a program of the Milestones Project is really a very natural outgrowth. What we've said is we want to do something like Newman's Own, where a product is purchased and 100% of the profit of the net proceeds goes to charities. We want to do that. We want to do something like Tom's Shoes, where if you buy a pair of shoes, and it was actually our 11-year-old granddaughter, two of them, who happened to be 11 candidates for CISV, who gave us the idea. And we said, okay, well, what do we know? We know photography. We know that we believe that everyone has talent and creativity, which they underestimate. So what we'll do is offer children around the world a chance to take photographs and do something in the use of those photos, create something good, which is if they're used by a nonprofit to tell their stories or a for-profit to tell their stories of social responsibility, that income will will benefit a nonprofit. And 100% of the net proceeds will in fact go to a nonprofit for CISV. And we just started. It's 1 week old. But we also had a second category of uncommon photographers, adults. And there we're starting to get people who would never be known as accomplished in that area, but are known in other areas. So Temple Grandin, one of the most influential people on earth, doesn't do photographs, but she does diagrams. So her diagrams are available. Sandra Boynton, who does hippos and 77 million cards about hippos, delightful person. She takes photographs kind of secretly, so her photographs, and then photographs from the Milestones Project. And these are images that we hope are absolutely compelling. And give you an example. Just hold it up. Here's a picture. What do you think?
It's beautiful.
Pretty stunning, huh?
It's really nice.
Beautiful.
Okay. It was taken by Jewel, who's from Canada, and she's 14 years old.
Wow.
Okay,
it's beautiful.
The youngest child we have is Laura, who's 4 years old, who took pictures of olives with her father's cell phone.
Of olives?
Olives.
I love that. Yeah. So I have to ask you. Oh, go ahead.
Okay. Well, then two others, just to give you an idea. We also take relationships and emotional moments. This is a Milestones picture.
That's
and
sweet.
and so smushing of cheeks is just an example of the kind of affect we want to create through.
Sure.
And then there's a picture like this lovely young woman who was part of a program we do in the Milestones program called Precious, where we'll take photographs of low-income families, even homeless families, and give them at no cost the picture of each of their children and the family. She was crying because she was going to doctor's care. She thought she was going for shots. She was actually going for a photograph. Yeah. But as soon as she saw the car turn into the parking lot, she started to cry. Never stopped crying, by the way. So those are, that's the kind of picture that we offer on the site. And we have people now looking at them and writing us saying, I couldn't take my eyes off the pictures. I couldn't, I went through and I kept going through. So on Friday, to give you a sort of a marriage of social enterprise with In Common, we had a conversation with the head of a company in London. What he proposed that he wants to do, he wants to give photo gift cards to his clients. He wants to buy an amount of money of photograph credit that he will give to his clients. So there's this win-win, this marriage of photography and philanthropy, which we've created with In Common.
So tell us a little bit about how, what you're seeing the In Common images, where it's going to be going, and how somebody can get involved in that.
Well, if you are a photographer or take pictures, not a professional photographer, or one of a child, or of an uncommon photographer, somebody who's well known in another area, very accomplished, you can upload now 6 photographs right to the site. It actually goes to a Dropbox and we edit them to make sure there's nothing inappropriate. Yep. Then we put them on. All we would need from you is 50 words about who you are and a charity you want the money to go to that's raised through your pictures. Then another part of the answer, I guess, would be that we want companies, corporations that are socially responsible, that let's say have an annual report, a sustainability report, a community investment report, to use these images to tell their stories more effectively, as well as nonprofit organizations that have to tell the public what they've done with their money, to have these images be in the cover and peppered throughout the report saying, here is a way that we tell our story of what we do that's good in the community, as well as use images that benefit charities. So we want everyone to win as part of this relationship.
I love that. And I love that it's about images. It's about the faces you see every day, and it's those uncommon people taking the picture for the common good. I think that's just a fantastic
and these
plan.
are all stories, you know.
It's all a story.
If we could look at on the right-hand side, Ariel. Ariel is from Canada, Calgary. She is now 6 years old. We caught up with her when she was 5. She was born as Down syndrome. She had a very deadly form of leukemia when she was 2.5 years old. Wasn't expected to live. But at 5 years old, when we came across Ariel and her story, she was in a ballet studio, in her tutu, pink of course. And she was using the rails, and she was lifting her legs, and she was turning her feet into each other, just like the Nutcracker ballet that we saw yesterday. And Ariel, in her mind, is going to be a professional ballet dancer. And the world can't tell her otherwise. And that's a relationship with Ariel that we are blessed to have by taking these photographs. But we want the world to know that in general we underestimate our creativity and talent.
Absolutely.
We have no idea what we're capable of doing.
Yeah.
And Ariel is an example. The girl to her, next to her, is an example of what we consider universal expressions of childhood. That's shyness.
It's shy.
And either you're clinging to your parent, or your eyes are down, or you're hiding behind your parent. But kids are universally doing the same things. Yeah. They're sticking their tongue out when they're excited or concentrating. They're choosing a hat that's an extension of their personality. Right. And certainly the faces you see here and the range of faces are truly beautiful.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and so global citizenship, as we heard in both the earlier segment and your segment, is all about the people.
Yeah.
Every person, every child is a global citizen when they look at that. And I think that's what's important.
Every person has a role. Every person can bring something to the table and really engage in this global citizenship conversation. Dr. Stickel, thank you so much for being with us today. Cristin, great show.
Yeah, it was really good.
And to learn more about the work of the Milestone Project, you can go to info@milestoneproject.com, or to learn more about the In-Common Images, go to incommonimages.org, especially if you're one of those uncommon photographers. Thanks so much and have a great weekend.